Well, let's discuss this further with our guests. We are joined live by Ross Feingold in Taipei. He's a former Asia chairman of Republicans Abroad. And from Washington, D.C., Chris Lapetina. He's a Democratic strategist. A very warm welcome to both of you. Mr. Feingold, I'll start with you. In some of Trump's first comments since the incident, he's called for Americans to unite. Just how significant is that at this moment?
Certainly his supporters want to hear from former President Trump that he's okay. And he's clearly injured, but it was a light injury. And he wants to communicate with his supporters. You know, the timing of the assassination attempt coming right before, as your report discussed, 30,000 people congregating in Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention. I think it's fair to say that this is just going to energize Trump supporters to be even more enthusiastic in their support for former President Trump.
And Mr. Lapetina, we heard from our White House correspondent. She was saying how the Biden campaign has decided to pull its attack ads criticizing Donald Trump, at least for the next 48 hours, I believe she said. How do you expect the Democrats to deal with this event?
Well, I think, first of all, I think that most people, Democrats or Republicans, are concerned, not only about a man being shot personally, his health, but also people in America understand that we're a very divided nation now, and this is a dangerous nation in the sense that we have tens of millions, hundreds of millions of guns. So everybody in America understands that. So any kind of incident like this sort of goes beyond politics, and we start to worry about our society pulling apart and how dangerous that can be. So I think that what President Biden did, trying to be as responsible, trying to be as non-political, trying to be as gracious as possible. That's important, and that's also good politics. I think what Mr. Trump did in his statement was also, I think, being very gracious and also good politics for him. So I think both sides have started out being as responsible and non-political as possible, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, it will be really interesting to see how long that civility lasts. Mr. Feingold, we haven't heard Republicans speaking with one voice on this, while House Speaker Mike Johnson said, we've got to turn the rhetoric down, we've got to turn the temperature down. There are other Republicans who have used this incident to attack, to even blame Democrats and Biden himself. Mr. Lapetina was saying how this moment is bigger than politics, but do you see some Republicans using this incident for political gain?
I think we do. I mean, we've already seen some of the comments by Republican office holders, which, frankly, were very partisan. Even Senator J.D. Vance, who's one of the people who's named frequently as a potential vice presidential running mate for Donald Trump, he was quite direct in his comments about Democrats and some of the rhetoric that comes from the Democrat side. And again, the partisan angle to this is going to come into play, whether it comes into play within hours or within 48 hours because of that pause that was mentioned for Biden's advertising. But I think we are going to return to partisanship really quickly. For better or for worse, that's what's going to happen.
And Mr. Lapetina, you're talking about how both candidates so far have been very gracious. But if we are going to return to partisanship, again, how do the Democrats deal with this situation?
Well, I think you're going to hear two arguments. The argument on the Trump side is that the Democrats' rhetoric has been irresponsible. It's led to this person acting. We don't know that for sure, but that seems to be what the argument will be. On the Democratic side, I think the argument will turn back to the shooter himself. The shooter himself used an AR-15, which your viewers may know about, but essentially that's the same sort of a rifle that the American military uses. And that's become a focal point for the idea about gun safety in America. On the Democratic side, there's been an ongoing discussion a conversation about why regular citizens have the ability to essentially get the same weapons that our U.S. military uses. And again, in the case of the shooting of Mr. Trump and those other victims in Pennsylvania, this shooter used a military-type weapon. How did he get it? Why was he able to get it? And I think it will reunite that debate.
That's really interesting that you say that it will reunite the debate, because traditionally Republicans have been against more gun control. Mr. Feingold, one of the biggest talking points about the Republican National Convention before this happened was about Trump announcing his vice presidential pick and who that might be. You've already mentioned J.D. Vance and what he has said about this and how he has used the incident to blame the Democrats. Do you see what has happened having any impact on not just the convention, but on Trump naming his vice presidential candidate?
Well, clearly Vance, and he's made it very clear from his own statements before this incident, he really wants to be the running mate. He's willing to give up his Senate seat to become the running mate. The other people in the mix, Marco Rubio, a bit more of a traditional Republican politician, Governor Burgum from North Dakota, who's not been in politics very long, but he's very popular in his home state. But clearly Vance is trying to play the politics of this, and that's a decision he's made to try and advance his decision. Trump has kind of indicated, he's hinted that he's made his decision, but until he formally announces it, then there's no decision yet. So Vance is clearly trying to put his name at the top of the list. Now, as far as the gun issue, though, Democrats want to pass more gun control, but the Supreme Court has been really clear in some of its recent decisions, and we've seen this after some of the recent terrible mass shootings in the United States, where the issue of gun control comes back up again. But Republicans are not in favor of it. They have the control of at least one house of the Congress or a sufficient number of state legislatures where these guns are going to continue to circulate. So I wouldn't expect there to be any gun control legislation that arises from this incident.
Ross Feingold in Taipei and Chris Lapatina in Washington, D.C., thank you both very much for your time on this.
Thank you.